welcome back to my series on perfect punctuation. Today we're going to be looking at quotation marks and speech marks. There are two types of quotation marks, single and double. The chief use of quotation marks is for, you guessed it, showing a quotation. That and for speech dialogue in stories. They are quite easy to understand. A pair of quotation marks encloses a direct quote. A direct quote is a repeat of a person's exact words. No paraphrasing or saying it in your own style or your own words. It is exactly, word for word, how they said it. We would use them like this. Marilyn Monroe famously declared, "Give a girl the right pair of shoes and she'll conquer the world." In this example, the quotation marks are always around the exact words that the person said. Anything that is not part of the quote is placed outside of the marks, even if you have to use two sets, like in this second example. There is only one way to avoid criticism, says Aristotle. Do nothing, say nothing, and be nothing. Let's look at the use of speech marks for writing dialogue next. Since that's what most of us are here for, we're writing stories and stories need dialogue. Personally, I use double quotation marks for speech when writing in my books. I do this because I feel that they look neater, more of a standard speech mark, and are easier to read and distinguish. Apostrophes are exactly the same symbol, and they can all become a bit confusing for some readers, especially if English might not be their native language for reading. It is our job to make our writing as accessible as possible for everyone, and that includes making it as easy to understand as we possibly can. This also means that if you wish to use a quote within a piece of dialogue, it does not get incredibly confusing. So I use double for speech and single for quotes. Oddly enough, using double marks is seen as more of an American style, while singles are more British. I'm well known for being very, very British in my writing, but as in a lot of punctuation, it's a question of personal taste, and I prefer to make myself clear in all of my writing. A basic rule to follow is that if you're using double marks for speech, then use singles for quotes within your work. If you're using singles for your speech mark, then use doubles for quotes. Don't try to use one for both, or it gets very, very confusing. Be clear and stick to one formula. One thing to remember with speech marks for dialogue is that all your punctuation must be within the speech marks. So any full stops, question marks, exclamation marks, all of that must be inside your speech marks. So let's look at how we would write dialogue within a story using speech marks. Do you note how the full stop is within the speech marks? Okay, so let's try it with other punctuation marks. In this example, the dialogue is in the speech marks, as is the question mark, but the rest of the sentence, which is the dialogue tag and the explanation, are not in the speech marks, as they are not spoken words. So let's look at how someone speaking within your story could quote somebody. See how I use the double marks for my dialogue and the singles for the actual quote. As I said, it's personal preference, but I find that it looks neater and easier to distinguish with that. Okay, now I know what I've just told you, that quotation marks must only be used for a direct quote for a person's exact words. I'm going to slightly break that rule. Go with me, as all will become perfectly clear. We all know of the sarcastic two-finger gesture that implies someone is quoting something ridiculous or stupid. Well, within writing, this actually has a name, and it's called a scare quote, although sometimes they're made worse by being called shudder quotes, sneer quotes, or quibble marks. I quite like a sneer quote. I quite like that sound. And I quite like that description actually, because that sounds very sarcastic, which is what most people use it for. This is a case of the quote not actually being accredited to one particular person. It's not a direct quote, it's merely a term or a phrase that some people would use. It is used when the writer wants to distance themselves from the quote. For example, Jessica was in a number of adult films before she got her big break. Have you heard about the team building weekend? So, to round up our little study of quotation marks, only put quotation marks around a direct quote or the exact words said by someone. Never use them with paraphrasing. Use speech marks to indicate the entirety of the dialogue that you're writing. All of it. Everything that is a spoken word by your character must have speech marks. Use scare quotes when you wish to distance yourself from the quote or to indicate sarcasm. All punctuation used within speech or dialogue must be placed inside the quotation marks. Well done, guys. Once again, we've done it. We made it through an entire series of videos on punctuation for writers. Give yourself a clap, because you all did so well to keep coming back and listening to me. Hopefully, with this new knowledge, you can use proper punctuation in your work with confidence. Until next time, blessed be and happy writing.